how are you today? I know it's been a little while since I came by to have a chat to you, but it's the end of 2020. Not only is it the end of a year, but it is the end of 2020, the year from hell. And so I thought now would be a good time to stop by and have a little bit of a chat about the year that was. So I started off 2020 floating in a pool in an Airbnb, gazing at the sky, and I had this strong feeling that this was going to be my year. I think a lot of people felt like that. Looking back on it now, it definitely was not the 2020 I had idealized, but I think I still did have a great year. I wouldn't change a thing about my personal circumstances this year because I learnt so much about myself and grew so much. I have changed a lot from who I was exactly a year ago. And I like who I am now a lot more than I liked myself in 2019. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to share with you 20 things I learned in 2020. I'm not going to dwell on all the problems that 2020 presented to me personally, my community, and the world as a whole. Instead, I'm just going to jump straight into these lessons. The first thing I learned was how to stop planning my time and start analysing my time. This means that I had to stop trying to create my ideal life for myself and instead look at how I enjoyed spending my time. I was constantly feeling guilty about not being productive enough, and I really just wanted to sit in bed watching YouTube videos all day. When I took the pressure off doing the things I was supposed to do and looked at what I was enjoying doing, which was watching YouTube, that was when I realized that I actually wanted to make YouTube content myself. By stepping back from the life plan that I had to follow and instead just looking at how I spent my time day to day, I realized that something was really important to me, not just because I was a lazy slog who wanted to stay in bed all day, but because I genuinely enjoy video content. The next thing I learned, which is related, is just cancel everything and see what happens. I think this is probably a really hard thing to do yourself, but that's what 2020 did to me. I was the type of person who needed a diary all the time because every day would be multiple entries of what I had on. I had work as a bartender, I had work as a gig booker, I had band practices for 3 bands, I had multiple gigs I was playing every single week, and then I had social activities in around all of that. It was crazy. And then in the second week of March, I think it was, all of that got cancelled. On the same day, pubs closed, which was my work, venues closed, which was my hobbies. Literally everything that I had written in my diary was cancelled. I remember looking through my diary, grabbing a pencil and just crossing out everything. And this caused me so much anxiety for the first couple of days until I noticed a shift in my mind. I started having so many more creative ideas for projects that I normally would not have time for. I started sewing again and painting. It actually led to the 14 new things in 14 days video that was the first ever video I made for YouTube. I remember saying that I felt like a teenager again, because when I was a teenager, aside from high school and dancing, which did take up a lot of time, I also had free time. And free time is where ideas are born. When you're busy all the time, run off your feet, creating things, sure, you're not actually being as creative as you can be because you haven't got the space to breathe. Your mind needs that room to think and come up with ideas. So I learned that that was really good for me, and I think if I ever get in another rut where I'm feeling very tired, exhausted, run down, out of ideas, it takes something drastic like cancelling everything to see what your mind actually wants. The next thing I embraced this year was exercise, but for the first time in my life, I was exercising to feel better, not to look better. While I've been lucky enough to avoid anything extreme throughout my life, I have participated in diet fads and exercise schedules and detoxes just to look a bit hotter, right? This year I started feeling a lot more aches and pains and worrying that maybe I was becoming old. And that led me to wanting to take care of my body so that I was physically strong enough to do things work required of me. Eating vegan also encouraged this for me because a large part of the reason I'm vegan is for the environment, yes, but also for my own health. So this year I took it a step further by starting to exercise, sometimes very regularly, just for the sake of my own health, to feel better rather than look better. When I felt like I had low self-esteem, I started doing yoga morning and night every day to improve with my confidence and give myself purpose. When I felt like I wasn't strong enough to lift things, I focused on weight training. When I wanted to take care of my health now and for my future, I do cardio like running. And while I'm still trying to figure out how to make exercise a daily routine for myself, I can say that I've definitely learned a new way of embracing exercise and wanting to do it for myself and not for other people to look at, but just for my own body to feel good. One really handy thing I learned at the start of this year was the 2-minute rule. If you haven't heard of it already, my interpretation of the 2-minute rule is that if you think of something and it's going to take less than 2 minutes, just do it. This means you text your mum back. This means you wash the bowl that you just put in the sink. This means you put your clothes away as soon as you take them off. Really, it just helps keep your environment and your mind clutter-free and calm. You don't have to keep remembering, oh, I forgot to text mum back, I forgot to text mum back, because you've already done it. So whenever something comes up in your mind, instead of pushing it aside, think about it. Will it take less than 2 minutes to do? Yes, then just do it. Another great rule I learned for keeping your environment clutter-free is to always carry something when you're moving room to room. If you're going from your bedroom to the kitchen, carry the mug that's been on your bedside table. If you're going from the bathroom back to the front of the house, take the loo paper roll with you and put it in the recycling bin on the way. Always having something in your hands means you're kind of always tidying and you're always putting things away without actually having to put in the effort of finding time to clean your house. Trust me, it makes keeping things tidy so much easier. Speaking of clutter, I learnt this year that I have way too much stuff. I don't know where to start. I've been learning about minimalism, and while I think a lot of my aesthetic and my decorating style is always going to lean a bit more towards maximalism, I really like the ethos of minimalism, if you will. I really like the calmness it can create. And while I've always felt like I have a fairly small wardrobe compared to what I would like, or there's always more things that I want, and I don't have enough makeup and skincare and homewares and books and all those fun things, I've also realized I have way too much of all of that. You may have noticed the background behind me is different. I have just moved house and there's a video about that coming up very shortly. But if anything teaches you that you have too much stuff, it's moving house. When you have to collect all of your belongings, put them in boxes, fit them into a small car and move them somewhere else, you just start wishing you had a lot less stuff. And so with this in mind, it's really helped me decide that I don't want to buy more stuff a lot of the time, which leads me to the next thing that I learned. I've been focusing a bit more on my personal finance this year. And one thing that I've finally trained my brain to do is to prefer keeping the money and saving it rather than spending it on something new. Even though they're super cute, I don't need that $12 pair of socks, because instead I could put that away, go towards my new computer, my new bed frame, a house deposit one day. Nowadays, when I look at something and I'm tempted to buy it, I try to think about the actual dollar amount, and would I rather keep that and save it than have this new shiny item. That's because this year I learned how to budget and save money in a way that suits me. Now, this video is not sponsored or endorsed by anybody, but the banking app that I use is called Up. And I'm pretty sure there's many other banking apps like it. Pretty much within your savings account, it allows you to create separate savers, is what they're called. You can give them a name and you give them a budget. And the idea is that you can allocate money from your savings account into that particular saver and see how close you are to saving up the amount you need. For example, if you're saving up for a new computer, you might create a saver, call it computer, say $2,000 budget, and as you put money in, you can see how close you are to your savings goal. However, I've started using this app not just for saving up for big ticket items, but actually for my fortnightly budget. I currently earn a fairly regular amount per week and per fortnight. And so from that, I worked out exactly how much I need for bills, for rent, for groceries, and how much I want to save every week as well. I created savers within my savings account with those strict budgets. So I know every week I transfer X amount into my groceries budget, and every week I transfer X amount into my rent budget. And at the end of the day, I'll have a little bit allocated extra that I can spend on whatever I want. And this also means I make sure I save a set amount every week too. This transferring system might be a bit finicky, but it works really well for me because I know I'm never going to keep up with maintaining a spreadsheet. Another lesson I learned in 2020 is that if you're consistently feeling down, you might have to change something big. So while I feel like I was thriving in ISO for the first half of the year, from about August onwards, I started to feel really crappy a lot of the time. It helped a bit when I went back to work and when I started seeing people regularly. But even as life became a bit more normal, I was still feeling grumpy and sad and angry and just trapped a lot. I spent a lot of my time complaining about my house being messy, about my neighbours being loud, and about my room being too hot or too cold. And it got to the point where my boyfriend suggested that maybe the house was the problem. Not that the house itself was inherently bad, but I'd just been there for so long and spent so many hours in it this year that I was sick of it. And even if I fixed the problems I had with the house, I'd probably still not be happy there. I had never had the idea myself that I could move out and fix my problems, but as soon as he suggested it, I knew he was right. And so immediately I started looking for somewhere to live by myself, and even just searching, my mood picked up. And now, even though I've only just moved, I can say that I'm feeling consistently happier than I was back in that share house. Again, I'm not blaming the share house, it was just I was so sick of that environment that I felt like I was stuck there, and I got stuck in a rut in my mind just because I felt like nothing was progressing. So I guess my point with that is that I was feeling really down and doing lots of little things wasn't helping. It took a big change, something exciting, something new, something that I hadn't thought of myself, to actually pull me out of that rut again and start actively living my life, as corny as that sounds. And this kind of ties into my next lesson, that if you obsess over something, you will make it happen. This is kind of how manifestation works, as far as I'm aware. I've only started learning about that this year as well. But pretty much, if you have something on your mind, if you think about it all the time, you will find a way to make it happen. The most recent example of that for me is apartment hunting, because I spent all of my time, morning and night, every spare minute, looking for apartments, seeing what was available, applying, finding ways of making my applications look better. It was all I could think about for a good couple of months while I was looking. And even though it seemed out of reach, and even though it took a lot of hard work, I made it happen. And this is something that I want to apply to more aspects of my life, whether it's music or the YouTube channel or any other creative endeavors I go for. If I become obsessed with it to the point where I am doing it morning and night, breaks at work, every day, you'll find a way to make it happen. Another thing that I learned about this year, actually originally through a TED talk, was ruminating, or dwelling on negative thoughts, especially in regards to work. I can't remember who the TED talk was by, but I listened to a TED talk about somebody who said he really loved his profession, but for some reason he'd get home from work and just be really stressed about it. And that's because once he was home from work, he was still thinking about it all the time. After hearing this, I realized I do that in my own life too. I enjoy my bartending job while I'm at the bar, surrounded by my co-workers and the clients that come in. But for some reason, when I get home, that's when I stress. I stress about what might happen and things that have happened in the past, things that have been said, things I've had to mop up. The list goes on, and I start convincing myself that I don't like my job. And then when I realize that I have a shift coming up the next day, I spend all my time complaining about it, being like, I don't want to go to work, I can't be bothered, I wish I didn't have to work, da 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 da, until I get to work and enjoy another shift. I also do this with my own projects. And while I'm still trying to figure out how to get out of my head, I realize that most of the stress is just in my head, and I need to find a way to consciously separate work from home, not just physically, but in my mind. I'm still working on this, but stuff like meditation or just being actively aware of your thoughts really helps. Another part of clearing your mind is to focus on just one thing at a time. This is a quick lesson, but it applies to literally everything from writing an essay to watching TV. If you want to get the most out of it and get it done in the quickest time or the most effectively, Don't be doing other things on the side. I think everyone knows this, but I started to really put that into practice this year. It just leads to more peaceful enjoyment of all my tasks, I think. One really important thing that I learned this year was to write down everything that comes to mind, especially if you can't do it in 2 minutes, like the 2-minute rule. Whether it's items you need to shop for, things you need to remember to do, ideas you have for future creations, write them down. This is because your brain is for creating ideas, not for holding them. And you'll notice that your brain starts spending all its time ticking over things it has to remember and stressing itself out if you don't write these things down. Grab a journal, use your phone, whatever you need, just every time you think something, write it down, and you'll have so much more room in your brain to think up new things. One thing I learnt in all the spare time this year was to find hobbies that you do just for you, just for your own enjoyment, and definitely not for money. One really hard thing about being a creative, especially being a musician, is that you take it so seriously. So even if playing bass started out as a hobby, now that you play in 3 bands and run a record label, you're using it as a business, and I would like a career in it, so there's nothing wrong for me treating it like a business. But I needed to find new hobbies that I didn't take so seriously. And so this year, I realized that I enjoy cooking for myself. It's something I'm definitely never gonna do professionally. And absolutely guilt-free, I enjoy sitting down and watching Netflix. I enjoy binging TV shows, watching movies. That's a hobby of mine, and I get to enjoy it without the stress of needing something from it. This year I learnt that just doing your groceries at Aldi and at fresh food markets will save you a lot of money. Even though some of the major supermarkets are really cheap, actually going out of your way to find fresher stock and discounted stock really adds up. I spent a lot of this year without my car because I didn't need it to get home from work, so I lent it to my boyfriend. And because I didn't have my car, I learned that a lot more places are walking distance than you might think. I started walking to do my groceries, which I'd previously always driven to. I walked for 10 minutes and found that there was a river and all this nature and walking tracks right on my doorstep that I had never even seen before, even after living in the same spot for 1.5 years. So if you're like me and you've had a car your entire adult life, I encourage you to try not to use it for a bit and find out just how much of your local world is actually walking distance from you. After finding all these tracks by the river, I learned about myself that I actually enjoy running, something that I've hated my entire life whenever I've tried it on the aforementioned fitness kicks. But because suddenly I was doing it to be near the river and in amongst the trees, I enjoyed running for the nature rather than running for my fitness. I think something that we all learnt while the world was closed this year is that alcohol and dining out are really expensive. I don't know if you're the same, but I saved so much money this year while I was just staying home and cooking for myself and not drinking, and I felt fantastic too. So even though the world's opening back up and it's really exciting to get back out there a bit, I think I've learnt to pull in the reins a bit more. And as I was saying before, I'd rather save up the money than spend it on a night out a lot of the time. Now the meals out and the nights out are reserved for special occasions. And one final thing I learnt, and I'm still learning, is that the only way to stop complaining and feeling sorry for yourself and just being stuck in a rut is to take action. Sometimes it feels like it's the last thing you want to do, but if you're like me and a lot of your mood depends on self-esteem and how you feel about what you're doing with your life, the only thing you can do is just get doing. Start doing it. Not feeling confident about doing something? Do it, and once you've successfully done it, you've got the confidence too. I mean, there's so many Pinterest quotes, I might put them up here, that are corny as hell, but I love them and I still look at them regularly. The only thing to do to get out of the rut is just do the thing. And that's what I'm planning on doing more of in 2021. It goes for my YouTube videos, for my music, for cleaning the house, for writing poetry, anything like that. I'm just gonna do all the things. So thank you so much for listening to the 20 things I learnt in 2020. I'm hoping maybe you learnt some of them too, and if not, I hope they make sense to you now. And most of all, I hope you have a happy new year. I look forward to seeing you in 2021, and let's hope we have an even better year. Click the like button, subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll see you very soon. Bye for now.